Okay, welcome to episode 11 of the Sean McGuinness podcast. Weeks are flying in. Now today I'm excited to talk about this topic. I always say that before every topic, but I'm always excited to talk about these things because I know you're going to be able to apply that to your fat loss and health straight away. You're going to get good results, then you're going to tell other people where you got the info from, and then suddenly lots of people are going to be listening to this and getting good results, feeling good, and that's the main objective. Now, to start the podcast today, I'm going to quote a good man, William Shakespeare, from his play Hamlet, where he said, "To track or not to track, that is thy question." Okay, it's a very great quote. And obviously we're talking about tracking calories. So, in the world of fat loss, okay, hopefully you've bypassed the bit where there's all these charlatans telling you calories don't count, okay? Let's say you're past the stage. They do count. Fat loss is about burning more calories than you take in, okay? Again, easier said than done, as we've talked about in previous episodes. And now you're probably at the stage where you hear people say, you don't need to track calories. You do need to track calories. Tracking calories is stupid. Not tracking calories is stupid. And there's people on both sides of the fence shouting at each other saying, I'm right, you're wrong, blah, 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 blah. And normally good coaches will sit in the middle of that and they'll take, okay, the pros and cons from both situation, and then they'll apply it to the right person. So there's different tools that you can use to apply to you at the right time to help you get results. And that's what it's all about. So hopefully I want to name a few different tools and some of the confounding variables that you need to take into account to see, should you track, should you not track. I'm going to name pros and cons to both. Okay, so just to give you a little bit of background, I have obviously coached people for a number of years, and I've used both ways of doing it. Okay, there's a time and place for both. Let me give you a quick example. So, option A, or example A. I've got someone in, they want to come in and lose weight. They've been eating processed food, like really high calorie processed food, not training, not doing anything, okay? They come into me. Normally I'll give them a little, say, portion control guide using your Palm, Precision Nutrition. Like, I'll actually use that same one, have a look. Just to give them guidelines. I might say, okay, let's start eating 2 to 3 meals a day if that's what they've normally ate before. And example A just starts to quote unquote eat better, eat healthier. Okay, so they start to eat more whole foods. I might tell them, let's try to get some more veggies with lunch and dinner. Let's get some more protein. And that person who has eaten 3, say, really high calorie processed food meals for the last few years, suddenly they're eating 2 good meals a day. And maybe 1 bad one, or 1 with processed food. That obviously is going to lead to them eating less calories in most cases, okay? Because whole foods, they're hard to overeat on, okay? They fill you up, they regulate your appetite. So a lot of time when someone starts to eat better, they're naturally going to eat less calories in most cases, okay? Then they've added training into the mix, so now they're burning more, they're taking less in. That may be enough for that person to simply lose weight starting off, okay? Then that person, hopefully they don't, but they may say, oh, you don't need to, they may say to their friends, you don't need to track calories. I don't track calories. And yes, and that's sometimes how it gets out. My clients don't do that, but it happens in some cases. We always see that when people lose weight and they may have lost the weight using one tool their coach has given them. So that coach has given them the right tool, and they mistakenly think, oh, this is the tool for everyone needs it. And they fucking start spouting about how everyone needs it. No, that's what's worked for you. It doesn't mean it's for everyone, okay? So that's example A. They didn't count calories starting off. They've trained and then they've lost weight and they're starting to get very, very good results. And I might have someone who, they may have done this for a really long while. I've had people lose 20 kilo plus doing this, okay? Now, let me contrast to example B, the person example B. They come in, let's say they've been eating the same processed food diet for a few years, not training, etc., etc. Now, one thing we need to take into account with processed food is always compare it to porn, okay? You're probably going to laugh. anything that hits the dopamine and reward part of our brain. Processed food hits the same, say, part of the brain as drugs, alcohol, drugs, gambling, alcohol, sex, porn, etc. Not to the same extent, but it hits the same part of the brain. Now, any time you overload kind of the brain when it comes to reward, what it does, because you're overstimulating it to unnatural levels, is it will start to downregulate the dopamine receptors. Okay, so the chemicals released and it attaches to the receptor, obviously that thing that makes you feel good. Okay, in the most fucking simple terms, I'm going to say that. And okay, so then after a while you need more and more of that thing to elicit the same effect as the first hit. Okay, same with drugs, same with coffee, which I'm about to get one after. That's just the way it is. So if someone's eating a lot of processed food for the last few years, oh no, sorry, I went on a tangent. How the fuck did you end up comparing that to porn, Sean? Alright, someone watches porn, okay? They release dopamine in their brain, they feel good, they do the deed, they feel good again. So after a while, obviously, the dopamine receptors downgrade. Now, to elicit the same effect as the first time you done it, you need to start watching kind of freakier porn, okay? Then blah, 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 and that just leads down mad rabbit holes. Joe Rogan was talking about quarantine porn. It's getting to a very dark place, okay? And yes, so if someone eats processed food, say they've get a reward hit from eating one chocolate bar, okay? Over time, if they keep eating chocolate, they need 2 bars to elicit the same effect, then they need 3 bars. So they need lots and lots of processed food after a while, because the dopamine receptors in the brain downgrade to elicit the same effect, okay? We see this when we probably talk to our parents, and in the past, 1 chocolate bar, maybe in their time, is like 10 now, because we're just overeating it. Now, that same person, that happens to everyone, okay? So, in example B's case, they may be in that situation. Now, sometimes, if I simply tell someone to start eating healthier food, okay, it mightn't be viable, because if someone whose dopamine receptors have downgraded a lot from years of this over rewarding food, if they now go to eat healthy food, it's going to taste so bland, okay? It's going to taste like cardboard, because healthy food is naturally not that rewarding anyway, okay? So now it's even less rewarding, okay, by a long while, obviously depending how many years you've abused that system. So someone may have been eating shit food, they try to go the healthy route, simply only healthy food, cut out all the junk food, and that's not viable. They're going to bounce back because it tastes so bland. It doesn't, you don't have any rewarding benefit, there's no pleasure from food, and they can't stick to it, and they go, fuck this, I'm going to go back eating all that rewarding food. So, in this case, what if we got that same person and simply got them to track the processed food that they're eating? Because again, you can still lose weight by eating processed food if it's less calories, okay? Say they're eating McDonald's 3 times a day, okay? Now, if I just got them to track how many calories they're eating from McDonald's and got them to pick lower calorie options, they track the food, lower calorie options, they can still eat McDonald's 3 times a day, but now that they're eating, say, let's see, in most cases you need to eat 500 less calories a day, or you need to burn off 500 calories more calories a day over the week. 3,500 calories normally equates to around half a kilo of fat you've lost. So if they're eating 3 meals, they just need to eat 2 and a bit 100 calories from each of those 3 meals. Oh, not even, sorry, what am I talking about? Less than 200 calories from each of those 2 meals. 3 meals. Okay? A tablespoon of olive oil is around 100 calories. Okay? So they could go and say, instead of getting 3 Big Macs a day, they get 3 fillet fish. Okay? That's going to be enough starting off to enable them to lose weight. Okay? Without disrupting that pleasure center of the brain, without disrupting too much the relationship with food, and they still feel, I'm not on a diet, I don't feel mentally restricted, I'm eating this food, I'm still getting pleasure from food, and I'm still getting results. Perfect. Okay, so now we have 2 contrasting scenarios. One who's tracked calories, one that doesn't. Both are getting good results. Now, this is where we kind of transition over and look at the pros and cons to both. In the first case, okay, example A, who didn't track calories, for most, it's not viable. I'm going to take most. It's not viable for someone to eat only good food forever and ever. I'm not saying that's bad. It's obviously good, but it's a natural part of life these days to get some kind of pleasure from food, especially rewarding foods that are out there. There's no doubt about that. So, what people do, and we see this when people go on diets, they might go, let's say for example, low carb or paleo, etc. Cool, they lose weight starting off. But the problem is they don't know how to reintroduce foods. They don't know how to reintroduce processed foods or drinks into their nutrition and keep it in moderation and still lose weight. That's the hard bit. So they go on this healthy eating, low carb, whatever you want to call it, paleo, but they can't transition over to then having some chocolate within the diet or then having some drinks. That's the bit where we may start to track calories, which I've used before. So example A is lost weight. They've done it simply by healthy eating, but they may get to the stage where they want to start to fit in those few drinks on the weekend. They want to start to fit in a bar of chocolate every night. But they're unaware of how many calories are in foods. So I may get that person to go through a phase, maybe 1 to 2 or 3 months, whatever it is, of they may even weigh out the food and track it, just so they know how much is in food. And again, within this journey, when I'm coaching someone, it's an education process. So I'm trying to educate them throughout the whole journey. Because you ever track, say, a pizza or something and go, Jesus, that's my whole day's calories. Well, if someone has never tracked calories, they don't know that. So they may be more at risk to gain that weight back when they start to reintroduce these foods because they're unaware of that. So the healthy eating person, example A, now transitions over and starts to try to fit some foods or drinks they enjoy in there. And again, that like 80% whole foods, keeping with the things they're doing, but start to reintroduce foods they enjoy. Okay? To either keep losing weight or to sustain the results. Okay? Perfect. So we've used a bit of both. In example B, in that case where he's not eating really good, but we've eaten less calories, okay? He's now getting results. He's losing weight. He or she, sorry, I mean they. Or it, whatever you want to call it. And yes, they're losing weight. Now the problem is, after a while, if you can lose weight and just eat only processed foods. But the problem is, a calorie deficit is also a nutrient deficit. So you're not getting much nutrients in there. And it's not really viable long term. Okay? Health-wise, etc., etc. So, what I'll do with this person is, when I get the calories in check, now I'm going to try to start to increase the amount of good food within that diet, within that new person's plan. Okay? So we've controlled the calories. Now we're going to start to introduce more whole foods in there. So it's less of a shock. So, for example, like the example used, girls use eating fillet fish 3 times a day. I might say to them, how about we start to get a side salad with that? Okay, and then maybe with a bit of fruit thereafter. Yada, yada, yada. Go down. We start to get more good quality food in there. They lose weight. They feel better as they start eating less rewarding foods, or as they start to eat more whole foods. Remember we talked about the dopamine receptors. Well, after a while, if we stop hitting them as hard, they start to regenerate. So now, as they go, they're starting to lose weight. They're starting to get in good habits. They don't feel like they're on a diet. They're starting to eat more salads and more veggies and more fruits and more whole foods, animal proteins, etc. Well, now, because they're not eating as much rewarding foods, the dopamine receptors start to regenerate. Then they can start to actually enjoy the whole foods even more now. They're starting to eat some blueberries and go, oh, I never knew they were that sweet. Or they're starting to eat some kiwis and go, wow, the flavor, etc., etc. So, that person is now doing what example A did, and they're starting to increase the whole foods in there. So hopefully as they go. Now in this person's case, because they've tracked calories starting off, and they may have good education around what's in foods, they may now transition off in the future, or now, wherever, to quote unquote more intuitive eating. Okay, now when I say intuitive, I took the piss last week where I made a video on intuitive eating. And that's because people go, oh, eat how you feel. No, you can't do that. You can't do that. Because the problem is, our brains are more wired to eat a fillet of fish than a spinach leaf. So you can intuit it. But what you need to do is you need to be aware and have education around what's in what foods. And then you'll become more aware, and then you can start to plan from there on. Okay, about how much you need per day. Okay. So example B can now transition off to eating more whole foods, but they're aware of how many calories are in things, so they can fit it into the day without necessarily have to track. And that may be that person's way of losing weight further and sustaining their results. And obviously in both cases, you'll still track your weight, your measurements, etc. Because if they start to go up, well, then you may need to get a bit more stringent on where you're at. Okay? So that's two examples of things I've both used. So if we even look at tracking, I don't expect someone to track forever. And it's probably not viable in a lot of cases. The goal is to kind of get someone to the end of it where they're eating a lot of whole foods that will, as I said, regulate your appetite. No one's overeating on like whole foods. No one comes to see me and goes, Sean, I'm after getting so obese. I just can't stop eating steak. No, because again, these foods are not made rewarding. They're not made in a way by all these food companies that force your brain to release all this dopamine. And again, highly rewarding foods, as I've talked about before, they shut down the appetite part of our brain, so we overeat on them, which is why your dessert stomach comes into play. You won't be hungry. Someone will hand you a packet of Tim Tams and you'll polish the whole thing off, because our brain's wired in a way where it was a scarce food environment. So the minute we could get our hands on very high calorie food, and we're going to eat it, and it's probably going to override our appetite and purpose. And now food companies take this to the next level, the way they make foods and blah blah blah, like I've talked about before. As I said, I always reference The Hungry Brain, that book, if you want to understand more about how Western companies have effed you. Look at that. And you need to be aware of that as well. So, there's some other ways, if we kind of look, like I've talked about before, at long-term sustainability, or ways of controlling your calories in both cases, whether it's purely from in an app or eating better. And as I talked about before, you still need to control your food environment, because if there's these foods around us, we're more likely to eat them. So make sure you're controlling what foods are at home, wherever you're at in your journey. If there's high calorie foods at home, you're going to eat it. That's just the way your brain's wired. So make sure you're controlling that. Control the best you can in work. In the case where you may not want to track in MyFitnessPal, you may be in example A's case, you may be example B, you may be in between. Tracking your food is not only for the calorie content, obviously that's so important, but it's for the awareness. Most people are not aware of what they're doing on a daily basis, because up to 50-60% of what you do on a daily basis is unconscious, it's habitual. So if you apply that to your food, you probably can't remember half the stuff you do on a daily basis. So even so much as writing your food down, that will be enough to gain awareness of where you're at, and you can begin to see patterns from there. Obviously, stuff we've talked about before, if you're an emotional eater, without having to track your calories, if stress is a trigger for you and you overeat on processed food when stress hits, well, if you control that stress, you're less likely to stress eat, and then you've controlled your calories in that way as well. So again, we're kind of taking a subject, we're shining the light on it, but we need to be aware of all the other stuff we talked about in all the other episodes, so make sure you go and listen to all them as well. In example A's case, just a few more points. Obviously, tracking after a while is brilliant, because we want to make sure we're getting enough protein in there. Simply eating less calories is good, but if we do it over a long period of time, we may lose muscle mass, that muscle tone, which is not what we want. We want to be able to maintain as much muscle as we can while we lose the fat around it with nutrition. And yeah, as I said, people can eat processed food and still lose weight. They've done studies on that, etc. But after a while, your hormones might get a bit stuffed up because you're not getting enough nutrients in, deficiencies, iron, zinc, blah blah blah, etc, etc, etc. Okay, so in a response to William Shakespeare, to track or not to track, well, you can do both. I would just see where you're at in the period of time, maybe see which one you've tried in the past. which one you failed at. And remember, you probably want to use a combination of both at different periods of where you're at in your life. For some people that don't want to track their calories, obviously I deal with a lot of people, high up CEOs, etc. They're just not in a position, so I might get their food tracked, food deliveries, etc. Obviously, after a while, if they're looking at drinks, we still need to be aware, and that may be that education process. But yeah, there's multiple ways to skin a cat, is what I'm trying to say. Okay, there you go. Okay, I hope that answers your question. As I said, if someone, when it comes to, if it's fat loss, it's health, whatever it is in life, if someone's just spouting one thing, you must intermittent fast, lose weight, you must do this low carb thing, because that allowed me to lose 50 kilos, you must not track your calories like Adele, whatever it is, that person doesn't understand everything. Okay, most of the coaches, which is annoying, they always finish with "it depends" when you ask them a question, because it does depend. Okay, you have to see what's right for you in that particular case. Okay, otherwise everyone would do one particular thing, everyone would lose weight, I'd be out of money, there'd be no good coaches out there. There you go. So that's it. If you have any questions, please DM me. Okay, I'll be happy to answer it. I hope that allowed you to get a little bit more insight into things you want to think about when picking the right approach for you. Obviously, have a look what you've done before, what's worked, what hasn't worked. That all ties in together. Okay, wrapping up episode 11. Please like, share, rate, review, all that good stuff that allows more people to hear about this, and that allows more people to bypass the bullshit and hopefully achieve better results, feel better, look better, and all that other great stuff. Hope you're keeping safe in this crazy time, and we will get through this together. Love you all. See you in the next episode.